Good morning, wonderful humans. My name is Scott Millar here from BOP Industries, and I'm really excited to be joined by Dominique Lamb, the CEO of the National Retail Association. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So this morning we're here to have a chat about the future of retail. Now, there's been a lot of changes over the past 10 years, and I wanted to look forward to the next 20 and 30 years for students that might be in the classroom today, considering career pathways out there for them. And I wanted to get your 10 cents on what a career in retail might look like.
I think a career in retail is incredibly diverse these days, and it's very much changed from that, just simply being on a shop floor, working casually, whether it's in a kind of a butcher, baker, or candlestick maker or whatever else you're doing. But these days it's more about, that digital component. I mean, there's also a whole raft of skills and jobs in head office where you look at, buying products, looking at fashion, picking styles, looking at art, creating installations, or even experiential retail where you actually design the full experience from either online or in-store, or just, what it's simply like to be with a particular brand.
That sounds fantastic, and so many different opportunities there that I could see involve so many different skills. Can you talk to me, I guess, about the different jobs you've seen emerging over, say, the past 10 years in the retail space?
Certainly in the past 10 years, it's very much been driven at digital, and I think we've seen that kind of globalization of retail, and we talk about that in lots of industries, but now it's about being able to work anywhere in the world, anywhere or anytime, doing whatever it is that you love. And I think what we've seen in our retailers is really a shift from you simply perform tasks to we want the right kind of person to fit into our culture to create not only an experience for our consumer, but also for our employees. So I think in the last 10 years, we've really seen a movement towards that design factor, the curation. We've seen a change in retail from, having lots of things in store and lots of product where you just simply go in and buy, to having more of a museum approach. So a great example of that is somewhere like in New York, where you look at the Museum of Ice Cream, for instance. And what they've done is they've really diversified how they sell. So they've got a storefront. Sure, you can go in and you can purchase ice cream and all other ice cream themed things, but you can also do a tour. So you pay an entry fee, and then they've got themed rooms, including slides where you land in giant pits of sprinkles. And then they've got, honeybee themed rooms, and they've got, jazz players and all sorts of things. And what they do with that space is they also rent them out for events. So it's become this kind of subscription model with a retail storefront plus, having event space.
I love that, and it's like diversify their revenue streams as well at the same time. And I can imagine increase the lifetime value of a customer. Instead of coming and spending $4 on a scoop of ice cream, they could be spending potentially far more as they go and explore, they get the tour, and it inspires them to buy more ice cream as well.
Absolutely, and it's about looking at retail in a new lens, and I guess using those other skills from other industries like design, for instance, or even things with operations where you're looking at planning and looking at scheduling and all of those kinds of things, that kind of technical approach. And then implementing it in a fun environment that is colourful. And I think when you think about careers, it's really important to realise you're going to do it for a lot of days of your life, and looking at beautiful things is a far better way to spend your life than potentially looking at what you might find boring or mundane.
Absolutely. And now the Museum of Ice Cream sounds like a relatively innovative retail company. And I think a lot of us, when we think about careers in retail, we think about those big traditional retailers that have been around for years and years and years. Can you talk to me about some of the new emerging startups in the retail space that are getting you excited?
There are some incredible startups in this space. In fact, it is probably it's the best part of my job, is learning about the startups in the retail space. And one that comes to mind in particular is called Vivra Lifestyle. And the Vivra girls have designed a patented bag, which in effect has a magnet, and it's kind of the new version of the bum bag. You can slide it into your activewear, it's washable. It also comes with a chain, and it converts into either an over-shoulder bag, a clutch bag, or you can use it running. The technology that they use means that you can't be skimmed. So they've protected everything inside, with your phone and your credit cards and all of those kinds of things. They come in incredible colors, and they've kind of gone from strength to strength. They've just designed one product that is really well thought out, that cures a problem for lots of different people, whether it's athletes, whether it's new mums, whether it's people going to festivals, amongst other things, and they put their own spin on it. So they do things like they'll launch a particular product for Pride Week, for instance, or they'll launch a high-end product that might have leather or more detail in it, or a higher level of kind of fabric involved, or your simple kind of brightly coloured lettuce or like athletic wear. But they are, someone that is purely online. They're now selling into big retailers and they're growing their business, and it's kind of gone from strength to strength. They've got a great online presence as well.
That's fantastic. And for other people out there that are wanting to follow that sort of a pathway, what support is out there for entrepreneurs wanting to build their retail businesses? Do you typically go to investors? Are there accelerator programs? Do you normally bootstrap? What does that typically look like?
So the girls have a really interesting experience. And in fact, one of them found themselves, I think one's got a marketing background and the other a business background. They found themselves unemployed after a period of time, and they actually went through a government program where they received funding in order to write a business plan. And it was just really a simple process that they went through where, for a 4-week period, they learned how to build a business plan and they looked at a particular product, and that's how Vivra was created. Now, from there, they actually haven't gone to funding. They haven't looked at private investors or, equity investment or anything like that. They've just continued to kind of bootstrap it and grow it, basically online, because they don't need a hell of a lot of space. There are the two of them doing it, and because of the skills that they've got, they've been able to create this kind of online community, which is serving them very well. So I think there's a few different ways to go about it. I mean, I think when we think about retail and investment, everybody looks at Amazon, right? And they're like, yep, I'm going to grow something from nothing into this amazing, giant, big beast of a thing that actually isn't making any money. And I think for any young entrepreneur, the best thing that they can do is to understand the basics. They need to understand financial literacy, know what a balance sheet is, know what a P&L is, because as you grow, as you start to pitch, you need to be able to answer those basic questions to investors. And if you're not all over that detail, it can become very hard.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, I know I always say to young people is it's incredibly hard to get investment as a young person. You don't have a track record, you don't have typically formal education in the space, you don't have experience or a network. So if you can turn $100 into $100,000 of revenue, then you can potentially find an investor that'll take you the rest of the way. And mistakes are always going to be expensive. So it's better to make them at a smaller scale than with hundreds and thousands or even millions of dollars.
And I think also just knowing what you don't know, right? So that, where you're looking to hire staff, for instance, as you do grow, making sure you get the right advice, looking at structuring so that you can, protect yourself, if you do make those big mistakes. Just looking at kind of how can you make your life easier or your future self's life easier is really important.
Absolutely. And talking about making lives easier, I know digital tools have been a massive thing for all businesses, but especially in the retail space. And it can be overwhelming as a young person starting a business and looking at all of these different tools out there. I mean, you've got the e-commerce tools, you have accounting tools, and everything in between. What's your advice, or what have you seen work well for retailers that are just getting started and trying to find a few key tools that will grow with them? What do you recommend looking for?
Look, I think keeping it simple, right? I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel, and a lot of people will sell you things and tell you that you definitely need them when you probably don't. So for me, it's about looking at what other people the same size of you are doing. So, simple things like instead of having an FBOS machine, potentially using a square, for instance, that easy to use. Of course, you might outgrow it at some point and you might want to use, all of the other information that sits in the back of an FBOS machine later on, but you can get to that. You don't have to do it straight up. I also think going through providers like Neato, for instance, that will connect you into all of the different tools that you require is a great idea, because it's kind of your one-stop shop. They've got experts that you can talk to, they're trusted, they're not going to steer you wrong, and also you've got that support that continues as you grow, and you're not going to need all the plugins at once.
Absolutely. And I guess that's for young people looking to build their own business, but for young people wanting to learn a few skills for a career in retail, say they're joining a small business or a small family-owned retailer, or wanting to go for a small to medium-sized enterprise, what sort of skills do you think a young person might need if they're looking to sort of set themselves up for a job in a business like that?
I think that retailers are always looking for people with the right attitude, and at the end of the day, right now, there is a whole raft of grants or government grants at a state and a federal level to invest in young people in order to provide them with additional skills. There's traineeships, there's Cert 2s and 3s in retail, there's hospitality certs, there's business administration certs, and there's also a whole raft of micro-credentialing which you can use in other industries as well, including leadership, for instance, or resilience, or safety, or even customer abuse and violence. So I would say to them, have a conversation with your employer, look at what those options are, look at what funding's out there, and make it beneficial not only for you because you get the skills, but also for the business as well, because it'll help support them, particularly if they're a small business going forward.
Absolutely. And I know one thing that we always talk about is the power of Generation Z, which is those born after the year 1995 have grown up in a really technological world, and they often work with technology in very different ways to generations that have come before. Have you seen any examples of small businesses that have potentially utilized a young person to help, say, revolutionize their online presence?
I recently had the pleasure of being a judge in the Surfboard Industry Association's awards, and basically they run a whole heap of independent surf stores across the country. And one of the individuals that I came across was a man by the name of Wooly, and he's out of Western Australia. He's gone from 7 stores back down to 1 store. He runs a surf school as well as a shop. And he's taken a young person out of year 10, brought them into his business, who's now running his YouTube channel. Wooly has well over 35,000 views of his surfboard reviews. He's an ex-pro surfer, and now that person has a full-time job in his business. They're looking at upskilling him further because they are growing that YouTube channel part of Wooly's business. Yeah. Far more than they ever anticipated, because he simply has the skills. He can find content, he creates overlay, he does all the filming, he does all the editing. He chases those numbers and is able to kind of produce everything that they need in order to maintain this following.
That sounds fantastic. And I love the whole idea of, I always talk about reverse mentoring, where it says that young people have obviously got so much they can learn from more experienced people in the field, but I think more experienced people, like that business owner, has got so much they can learn from a fresh and different perspective. So it's great to see that relationship there.
Oh, definitely. And I think the thing about retail is we're the largest employer of youth in the country, right? So we employ 1.3 million people. We're talking a third of them are between 15 to 24 years old, and there is nowhere else that is more likely to invest in young people. And I just, I think about Universal Store, which started with 6 stores. They've now listed. Alice Barbary, their CEO, is probably the most passionate person about Generation Alpha, that I've ever heard. She spends all of her time understanding and reading and learning about, what it is to be a young person in this age. And then they take that information and they invest and they train and they grow from whatever level you start, and they really look after their workers. So I think it's about finding the brand that speaks to you and certainly your values. And we know with consumers it's exactly the same. We want to see our values reflected in, where we work or where we shop. And it's important to kind of have views about the rest of the world, whether it be sustainability or refugees or, activism. It's about finding where you fit.
That's fantastic. And as far as doing that, what would your advice be for a young person wanting to either reach out and make a connection with a potential employer that they think would be a great fit, or alternatively, make that leap from, say, the shop floor into the office and helping out on that side?
Look, I think it's just about, as I said, attitude and also just being probably a little bit more cunning than what you might anticipate. I mean, at the end of the day, it takes a lot of confidence to kind of put yourself out there. But if you get a no, it doesn't matter. You kind of keep trying. So I would say if you've got aspirations to come away from that shop floor or to utilize your skills, definitely speak to your manager, speak to your manager's manager, go directly to head office, go to the CEO if you have to, because at the end of the day, that's how you get noticed. You need to stand out and, send them a video. Send them, a CV with your photo on it, whatever you want to do. Make it animated, make it Harry Potter themed, whatever it is that suits you, but make it you and authentically you, and you'll get noticed.
Absolutely. I think that's the number one thing I always say to young people is great things never come from comfort zones. And if you're doing the same thing as everyone else, your chances of success are considerably lower than if you do something that does push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And it might be a little bit strange, it might be a little bit different, but if you make an impression that aligns with your values and puts you in the best light you think you can, it's such a great way of doing things.
That's it.
And talk to me as well about, I guess, the career pathways into retail. Now, you touched on at the start of the interview some of the different jobs beyond working on a shop floor in the retail space. What does a young person's career pathway typically look like? Would they go to university? Do they do a trade? Do they get work experience straight away? What are you sort of seeing?
Look, we're seeing it come in all different ways, right? And it really depends also on kind of where you live as to whether or not you're more likely to work in retail. So for instance, people in Victoria, 1 in 4 people would be employed in the retail industry. We see people start on the shop floor. We certainly see them come in casuals, and then they, kind of grow and they go through, to IC, to manager, to, area manager, all of those things. Alternatively, we see people that have got degrees. Certainly our young retailer of the year a couple of years ago did a marketing degree, went in as a buyer for a business, and has grown throughout that, into a more senior buyer, and ultimately will end up going overseas or working in high fashion, which is ultimately where he wants to go. But you can come in anyway, and it doesn't even matter what age you are. I mean, the thing about retail is we are very much really about ability and kind of that connection and that human connection. And it's more about developing a relationship with a brand. So I think if you've got aspirations to go to university and do, further study to get some more skills that way, that's fine. It doesn't mean you're not going to end up back in our space. You just might come in at the head office level as opposed to working your way up. Alternatively, if you want to learn from the basics, you can do that as well, and we offer those opportunities.
That's fantastic. And I think that's the great thing when we see the research showing that young people today are going to change careers every 7 years on average. That means that there's so much opportunity. Instead of picking a job that you're going to do potentially for the rest of your life, it's what you want to do for the next 7 to 10 years. And you can come in and come out as you build different skills and sort of, like you mentioned with micro-credentialing, stack those skills to take you to new and exciting places.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, the thing about retail is that we sell such diverse items, right? So you can speak to all sorts of people, whether it's camping or, whether it's toys or apparel or, even Christmas trees. Like if you're into horticulture, we probably have a place for you. At the end of the day, it's about what are you passionate about and what speaks to you more than anything, because you've really got to love what you do.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the great thing is you don't necessarily need to see yourself as a retailer to go into retail or to start a retail business. I was judging just the other week at the Teens in Business Awards, and we saw this young entrepreneur submit an entry from regional Queensland, and he lived on this cattle property. And what he'd do is he used all of his old farm equipment, and he used some welding equipment to turn it into really beautiful paperweights, and started selling it. And he was using the profits from that to buy cattle for his cattle station. And it was phenomenal to see a 14-year-old that lived on a farm that was just really passionate about welding and about farm machinery that had launched this retail business and was using it to, again, fuel his passion for farming as well. So it can help you in so many different ways. And even if you don't see yourself as an entrepreneur or a retailer, you might be doing that exactly.
I think that's exactly right. Not defining yourself by a label, because I think that sometimes people fall into these things and they don't view themselves as a retailer and they don't view themselves as an entrepreneur. And that guy probably defines himself as a farmer first and foremost. But I think at the end of the day, if you're a merchant, if you're a merchant and it's in your blood, you'll find a way to sell anything. And you'll find a way to kind of connect with that consumer, and that's a skill in itself.
Absolutely. Now, to finish up, I wanted to start talking about the future of retail, the next 20 to 30 years. I guess to start with, overall, like overarching trends, what are you sort of seeing? What are you excited about? And what are you hoping for?
Look, at the moment, we're certainly seeing the shrinking of store size. So it's very much, as I said, about that curation model. So it's having less stock in a store, having kind of more individual pieces. People are looking for personalization. It's kind of that one-off or those very, very limited items that are attracting consumers. And so we're seeing a lot more of that kind of curation happening. We're also seeing, the consumers want or need to be reinvigorated all the time. So another great example is a retailer called Camp, who are a toy store, but they actually operate with a black box model where they will change their entire fit out in 4 months. And their fit out involves interaction with children. So they will create false campfires and horses that you can ride around the shop and, sequins rooms and all sorts of things like that. And they redesign every 4 months to kind of create that excitement all of the time. And so that is certainly that experiential retail model is where it is all moving. And whether that's, personalized shopping or whether it's, live windows or even the way that you pay or interact with your consumer is all moving. We know that obviously QR codes are here to stay. We're seeing a lot of movements in that payment space as well. So that technology component, everything needs to be frictionless, whether it's online or whether it's in your store. It's got to be about having all of the options available and also knowing your products more than anyone else. So certainly consumers are looking at, how do I know what's the best product for me? And they expect you to know more than what they can find on the internet, and they certainly will be doing comparisons on their phone all the time. So it's keeping up with that technology, keeping up with those product developments. The other big thing, of course, is consumer activism. The big thing that we're seeing, that we've got new modern slavery legislation that really looks at your entire supply chain, how we are sourcing products, what does that look like, how much are we investing in communities, and it is that whole values proposition and creating it within a product that is becoming more and more important. And so we know that where a business gets it wrong, for instance, so we saw, H&M with the t-shirts, etc. If they don't apologize immediately, a consumer will just completely stop shopping with them. If they do apologize, they'll punish them for 6 months before they come back, right? So it's understanding, I guess, that big data component. And that is something that has been around but has accelerated post-COVID-19. And it's about knowing who you're talking to and knowing them quite intimately and knowing exactly what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And that's where it comes down to your customer personas, understanding their pain point, but also having that face time, which I think a lot of people, when they're just starting out, sometimes forget the value that comes from having just a face-to-face sit down with the target customer and finding out exactly what they want and what's important to them.
Yeah, definitely.
And talk to me as well about, you touched on technology trends and how technology is advancing rapidly. Are there any sort of technologies that you're watching that you expect to see in the next 10 to 30 years emerging in the retail space?
I mean, retailers love technology, and Australians in particular, early adopters. And so there is this amazing, really large retail conference that typically happens every year. It happens in New York alongside Retail Week in New York, and about 40,000 people attend that particular space. And of course, all of the tech players attend. There's a lot of Israeli tech out there, particularly around security. So facial recognition, being able to pay simply based on the way that you walk or the way that your face is structured, not having to have any contact at all is certainly something that we're moving towards. Having those contactless stores that are just not manned, so that we've seen with Amazon or even Alibaba, where you just simply walk in, take an item off the shelf, and all of it is curated. We've seen, we've got Bluetooth payments coming through where, you don't even really have to talk to anyone, and it will automatically recognize what stock's left the store, and you'll be able to pay without actually having a conversation. We're also seeing a lot of heat mapping happening to ensure that we know where people are going in a store. Of course, that can be used in terms of hygiene protocols, amongst other things. Even, social distancing technology is something that's emerging and we think is probably here to stay. So it is ever evolving, I think. And the tech, there's virtual mannequins. There's all sorts of really exciting things that are kind of happening, but it changes so rapidly.
Absolutely. And I think it complements what I just answered there around the technology, complements your previous answer where we talk about how, yes, there is a lot of technology coming through which helps with the automation, but it allows humans to do more of the human stuff. It's about the experience, and it's about that human-to-human engagement, which I think is really exciting as we talk about the future of work, and there's so much fear around robots taking our jobs. It's no, robots are doing more of the mundane stuff to let us be more human.
Yeah, definitely. I know certainly with picking and packing and distribution centres, that's the way that it's moving. But in saying that, there's always going to be a need for humans, because at the end of the day, retail is very much about that customer service and that touching and feeling element.
Absolutely. So a final question for our audience is, if they are looking to keep up to date with some of the exciting things happening in retail, have you got any news sites, podcasts, or books that you'd recommend they check out?
The National Retail Association has a whole raft of information there, whether it be on skills or advocacy, anything from sustainability to crime, amongst other things. But of course, the Retail Smarts podcast is there as well. We can actually listen to people in the retail industry that have had experiences, across the board in a whole raft of different countries, in different types of retailers, to get an understanding of just simply, where you might fit in. And of course, there is Retail Global or Retail Fest on the Gold Coast in April, which is a really incredible conference that kind of looks at everything from logistics to tech to e-commerce to, bricks and mortar, and you can really immerse yourself to find out, where you might want to fit in.
Fabulous, some great resources I'm sure our audience will be checking out. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.